Merry Christmas! I'm so glad that you've joined me for another Christmas Crafts and Chats. We're going to have a little chat today. I wanted to tell you about some of my favorite traditions from Christmases long past and some traditions that my husband and I still keep doing. The tradition that usually happens first is putting up our artificial tree. Ever since I was little, my parents would encourage my brother and I to color on the box to keep us busy so that we weren't super impatient and waiting for the tree to be up so we could help with the ornaments. This is something that Jake and I did this year, and we also did last year. I'll include that link in the video description. It's always fun to color even when you're older. I'm sure that this is a tradition that we will continue once Jake and I start having kids. I think that would be really fun to sit them down with a box of crayons so they could color next to the drawings that me and their uncle drew when we were little. Every year on Christmas Eve, my family and I would attend a candlelight service, and that was always so much fun, hearing a sermon geared more towards Christmas. Leading up to Christmas, we also heard those too. It seemed like every year I would learn a little bit more about the Christmas story that I didn't fully understand the year before. I'm even now still learning. It's so great to learn more context about Jesus' birth and why we celebrate Christmas. At the end of the sermon, the entire congregation would light up a candle, and then we would sing a couple of Christmas carols, and the light in the church is just so warm, so cozy and comforting. And I'm so glad that my husband and I go to a church now that still does a candlelight service. And it's kind of nostalgic, even though we haven't been at that church for very long. This next tradition is one that my parents started before my brother and I were around. They would always have pizza on Christmas Eve, and this is probably one of my favorite traditions because it's so easy. You get out of church, you call in your pizza, drive around for a little bit, and voila, Christmas dinner. Jake and I have actually continued this tradition because who doesn't want pizza on Christmas Eve? While we waited for our pizza to be ready after we had called it in from church, we would drive around all kinds of lit up neighborhoods, and one year we even found a drive-through nativity. They had their own cassette tape that would tell the nativity story and play some Christmas music. Patrick and I always liked to eat candy canes at that point, almost like appetizers. My favorite one was the blue raspberry flavor. I would always come home to eat pizza with a blue mouth. I don't know why I remember that, but that's just a fond memory. Once we returned home with our warm, tasty pizza, we would sit around the table and eat and laugh and talk about other Christmases, what we were hoping Santa would bring us, what would be under the tree, trying to give some hints as to what we got our other family members for Christmas. All the while, we would be drinking what we called goodness. It's Welch's sparkling grape juice, but for some reason my family started calling it goodness. It's just one of those things, I guess. Of course, we had cookies for dessert, and we would set out milk and cookies for Santa before we would go sleep in my brother's room since his was larger, and we liked to stay the night together so that we could talk and stay up late and be kind of mischievous. So obviously, since we were staying in the same room, we would get up to all kinds of shenanigans. My brother is quite the instigator, and he always liked to peek at gifts or sneak around and pretend to be a secret agent man, that kind of stuff, which was always fun until I thought we would get in trouble. Anyway, he'd always convince me that we needed to go look at the tree and see what Santa brought us, not to open any gifts before my parents were awake, but just to see all the splendor and the lit up tree, and there was always one or two lights on so we could see what was in the room, and just so Santa could find his way in also. My dad always had this rule, because we were so loud and stayed up so late on Christmas Eve, that we had to wait until there was at least a 5 in front of the clock to come out of the room. He liked to sleep in, and we were just too excited. We would want to get out of the room and start opening gifts early. So he finally said, do not come out of this room until there is a 5 in front of the numbers on the clock. So every Christmas morning we would go out and peek at the tree, and we got away with it for several years until my parents decided to prank us. The house that we were living in had a great big open doorway kind of a thing, and my parents would hang a big blanket over it just to keep the heat in that part of the house. Well, Patrick always liked to push through the blanket, walking through the middle, and I would always just kind of creep around the side. I didn't really enjoy having my hair all staticky and stuck to my face and all that. One year, we discovered a huge pile of cans behind the blanket when we charged through. My parents had set a trap for us, so they came storming out of their bedroom. I was terrified. I was convinced that Santa was going to take all of our toys away since we'd been naughty and were going to peek. They're laughing because we were terrified. We probably yelled or screamed or both. They scooped us up, probably had to calm me down and convince me that it was okay. They knew that we did this and it was just being silly. So they scooped us up and then we went and sat by the tree, and I'm thinking my dad probably made at least one pit stop by the coffee maker. One of my absolute favorite traditions is to make a treasure hunt for someone in the family. Usually my dad made it for me and my brother, but last year I made one for my husband, and a couple years before that I made one for my dad just as kind of payback for all of the tricky clues that he'd leave us. Usually after we'd finish opening gifts, there would be another gift suddenly under the tree and mysteriously appearing there. And then we would open it up and it would say, "There's one more gift that you have to find." That clue inside of the first box would lead to another clue and another clue and another clue. And these clues would take us all over the house, sometimes into the backyard, sometimes into the front yard, sometimes into the cars, the attic. Every room in the house was fair game. We kind of had to piece together logic puzzles in a way and find kind of puns hidden in the clues, and sometimes a clue could help you find a clue. But anyway, it was always really fun to get to the end and feel like you had really earned your present. The first treasure hunt that I really remember ended up being an N64. Yes, I'm old, kids. It was an N64 hidden in our TV case display stand thing. And it was so much fun. The rest of that Christmas, we ended up playing Mario Kart 64. It came with 2 controllers, so we played lots of rounds of this winner plays the next person in line, so then we would rotate through. I was never very good. I think I was in about kindergarten when it came out, but it was fun just playing with my parents. This year I've made a treasure hunt for my husband, and he's made one for me. I'm kind of curious to see what it is, but I'm just trying to be very patient and not spoil any clues for either of us. It's so hard to not talk about. Well, those are my favorite traditions that I wanted to share with you guys. I was wondering, do we have any of the same traditions? Do you go to a candlelight service? What are your favorite traditions? I'd love to hear about them in the comment section. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I hope I get to see you tomorrow. Merry Christmas!